All right, so let's jump into it. Let's talk about the history, a little bit of Dell Storage. 3 years ago, we were virtually 100% a reseller of other people's stuff. All right, so all the revenue we generated was you know, we resold everything. We even have records showing that we resold cars. We have a reseller program that has a very low bar of entry, where if you're in some third world country and the guy needs to buy a car in order to buy that storage system, then maybe we'll sell him a car. But that's changed. So we acquired EqualLogic 3 years ago, and we've made a remarkably fast transition from being a reseller of people's stuff to being an owner of pretty cool IP in just a span of 3 years. Which for a company like the size of ours is really light speed. And so we really could view ourselves as the hot startup. Startup in the sense that we're a relatively small, nimble organization. There's not a lot of inertia around legacy products that we have to deal with. We don't have an EVA. We don't have a Symmetrics. We don't have these kind of cannibalistic fears when we go down and look at innovative architectures. And frankly, a lot of the heads and a lot of the assets we have are startup assets, like the acquisition of Ocarina, Aperture.
Are you saying an EVA is not a high-end product?
Yes. Well, whether it's wherever it sits in the market, it's been around for a while, and so if someone at HP were to say, you know what, I can disrupt that entire business using x86 servers and virtualization layers and Flash to provide IOPS performance. Well, there's going to be a lot of kind of hurdles to overcome to really go put wood behind that arrow, right? And we don't have those same hurdles. So what is our storage strategy really? A storage strategy is to bring high-end features to the mid-market and to bring mid-range products to the high-end. So we're not going to go after Symmetrics with the Symmetrics killer, big monolithic fiber channel SAN kind of approach for G500 class customers. Our approach is more likely to be, you know what, we can deliver 80% of that capability at a quarter of the price. You know, and those are kind of the brand values of Dell anyway, right? So that's what people are expecting from us. And so with the center of our market really being that mid-market, SMB up to mid-size enterprise, that's where we design. Those are our design points. How we price our products, how we build features into them, how we focus on ease of use, and we see increasingly the large enterprise customer coming down and buying more and more of that stuff. In fact, if you look at the market for mid-range arrays, the large enterprise customers buy more of that stuff than the mid-range customers. Okay. So that's our strategy, and you're starting to see that with. When I say bring high-end features down to the mid-range product, that includes tiering and compellent, and that's a pretty advanced capability. So it includes things like short stroking and hot block caching and so forth, thin provisioning, dedupe compression, line virtualization, scale-out architectures, and so all those kinds of features being brought down to the mid-market. Are really starting to play out now. Okay, so let me skip ahead. Some of you have seen our fluid data architecture. Fluid data architecture is how we get there. And this is where all the architects across all the business units sat in a room and said, what should be our architectural principles in order to tell a different story as we go down, looking out 5 years and so forth. How are we going to be different than NetApp and EMC and HP and Cisco? It's going to be by focusing on these things. Now, some of these things are things that our competitors certainly are going to focus on. If they add value in the market, we're not going to be the only one pursuing these. But we think we have competitive differentiation in these areas, and it's sustainable competitive differentiation. And I'll just give you an example. So innovative licensing. When you fundamentally change your licensing model from an annuity model to a lifetime license or back, that really disrupts your financials. And so that's something that EMC can't just implement all-inclusive licensing. They can't just turn around and implement lifetime licensing of features that spans across platform generations. And that changes their business model. So, and that's something that Compellent and EqualLogic bring to the party. So I'll just I'll touch on a couple of these. Pure scale, I think you guys know what that means. That means transparent scaling of capacity and performance, transparent to applications and end users. Tiering and migration, either automated or exposing policies to customers, either heterogeneous across different platforms or homogeneous within a platform. Maximizing efficiency, really at the heart, it's it's data reduction to reduce storage as well as the cost of transporting data around. So keep it, don't rehydrate data when you move it around. But it also includes things like thin provisioning and eventually ambient air cooling and things like that. So efficiency is a big category. Self-protecting is interesting because we just acquired Aperture. So there's a proof point where we're fulfilling on these. Self-protecting storage to us means that if you look into the IT landscape, there are two completely parallel infrastructures out there. There is the production infrastructure and there's the disaster protection infrastructure. And it's a different buyer, and you run backup software on different hosts, and you run over different networks sometimes, and you have all this investment into backup and protection. That's sort of a separate train of budget and OpEx and administrative cost to the enterprise. We want to eliminate that. We believe by converging the idea of backup, restore, DR, snapshots, and replication all within the storage platform, that we can fundamentally disrupt that whole area. And you're starting to see that now. So Aperture doesn't do traditional backup. It's an application protection capability. You can restore your application from any point in time, application consistent, restore. And if you could imagine, and today we have, all of our storage systems have the ability to snapshot with a frequent basis, and you can roll back and restore from a snapshot. But the piece that's missing is the logic in between that says, I want a certain RPO, RTO, and I want to be able to have restore, and I have certain policies about certain workloads should be backed up and with different policies. And that's the logic that Aperture brings. So you're going to see over the next couple of years, Aperture will certainly be a DR solution for us, a piece of software, but those features will start to show up inside our storage products. Okay, so self-protecting storage, they protect themselves using replication and snapshots and the logic that provides the protection. Native cloud integration means, so Dell has cloud initiatives, and we may show up in the market and say, oh, we have another S3, use our S3, great. Okay. But for us, the way that the average enterprise is really going to start adopting cloud services is when it's so easy that you almost, it's like, oh, that's a cloud service? Oh, okay, whatever. That was so easy for me that I just turned the switch on and it just worked. So go into your product and say, there's a flashing green button that says, I'm your GUI. Oh, I've just already discovered your corresponding Dell cloud service. Your account's already set up. If you want to start replicating into the cloud rather than buying another system and standing that up in your other data center and negotiating with your networking guy for bandwidth and creating the cloud, just click this green button and it'll start doing the replication. Right? So for the SMB market, the mid-market, that kind of ease of use and native integration directly into the product, that's where we're going to be successful deploying cloud services. So tiering, replication, and DR in particular, right? So once you can stand up DR using that Aperture logic in the cloud, all of a sudden that becomes very interesting and very easy. And then you ask the customer, have you adopted the cloud? They're like, well, I guess so. This thing I do over here is just so easy that I didn't design for that. I didn't change my workflow for that. But yeah, I'm adopting the cloud. Something else that we're looking at that's super obvious is we are a leader in servers. How do you make storage and servers work better together? How do you take advantage of the emerging trends in server architectures and the fact that the bus speeds to local RAM and local flash are increasing by orders of magnitude faster than the speed to external network storage? Okay, so fiber channels going from 8 to 16, we're going to 10 gig Ethernet, and so forth. But the bus speeds on the host are going 10x, 100x faster with Sandy Bridge and some of these things. So So our mission with this architectural tenet, Better Together, is to say we need to extend the logical idea of storage up into the host. And you can imagine things like when I do a replication of my data image, it should include the things in the persistent cache on the host side. If I take snapshots, it should include those things. For some workloads, I might want to pin data sets to the host. But having a much more seamless connection between the host and its cache and its flash and the backend storage system. So that's what we're talking about there. You've seen an acquisition. I'll talk briefly about the acquisitions, but RNA Networks is a good example of where we're adding to our IP there. And then finally, we have one about consistent experience for our customers. That's everything from out of the box to things like Copilot. Has anyone heard of Copilot? Okay, all right. So Copilot is for every Compellent customer that was out there when Dell acquired Compellent, their number one concern was, don't F with Copilot. Copilot is the best thing that any vendor has ever delivered to them in terms of a support model.
It is the bomb.
Right? So now we're looking at, well, how do you implement that across things like EqualLogic? Now EqualLogic, which has a much bigger customer base and kind of smaller customers, we might not be able to have the sort of level 3 subject matter expert that knows everything about the customer's infrastructure on the end of the line every time. But that's kind of the aspirational goal. How do we get closer and closer to that ideal? So how do we bring Copilot values to the other buyers of Dell Storage? So these are the things that are guiding our roadmap, and we'll deliver on that strategy. And so in terms of putting together the pieces of the puzzle, EqualLogic and Compellent represent our core storage assets. Now we have Powerball as well. Powerball is a partnership, and we will continue to do things through partnership. Absolutely, we are not shy about OEMing things, about partnering in the market, about partnering at a technology level, and we will continue to do so. We will also continue to buy more companies. I guarantee you there will be more storage acquisitions this year. Don't ask me who they are. I'd have to shoot you. Okay, so the way we position these...
Nigel, ask him
Apparently,
who
it's
it
going to be a
is.
gun company.
Ask him who it is.
Well, they are from Texas.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Because I know Gina's packing.
Although...
Excuse me. I get dragged into this. Florida, so.
Come on now.
Right. Okay,
Stand your
so
ground.
the way we position these two, by the way, is for the average horizontal workload. Every customer in the world runs the same 5 applications: Exchange, SQL, home share, file shares, VMware, Oracle, SharePoint, right? And so that kind of consolidated workload, unified workload that you're selling to the IT generalist, these are the families that serve that use case. EqualLogic roughly serving the lower half of that market, and Compellent roughly serving the upper half. And so as we invest in R&D, you're going to see Compellent become much more large enterprise oriented, and EqualLogic will expand that guy downhill a little bit more into the SMB space and to create a little bit more of that separation. Powerball, for those of you that know, Powerball is more of a price performance leader. So if someone comes to us and says, you know what, I just need the cheapest JBOD array for a backup staging device. Here you go. $1 per gigabyte is Powerball, right? Or if I'm building a Gluster implementation and it's 3 petabytes and I need lots of cheap storage, that's what Powerball would be good for, right? But if you're coming to me and saying I'm going to run VMware and Oracle and home shares on in my data center, it would be more of these guys here. Okay, so we bought XNet in April 2010. XNet is our clustered file system, and for the customers we talked to that were XNet customers and they're still out there using it, it was the fastest file system they ever saw. Faster than the Lustre. It depends on the workload. I mean, you can always find winning points for different file systems and different workloads, but particularly write performance. It's the fastest write performance file system in the world. It's got, when we talk about clustered namespace and single namespace, you can literally, if you can put 3 petabytes of SAN behind this file system, you can literally put 3 petabytes of storage in a single directory. Okay, so NetApp still has volume limits, volume size limits, especially if you turn on dedupe and so forth. But the capabilities here are much more unrestricted. Today supports file sizes up to 128 terabytes. So it's, as a foundational acquisition, it was fantastic. But it is on the immature side in the sense that NetApp has 20 years of software features they built up over time, and snap this and snap that, and all the, IPv6, and so we're still playing catch up in a lot of ways. We'll be really straight about that. But in terms of the foundational capabilities of the file system, it's really a fantastic product. Bought Ocarina in July, and Ocarina is being implemented across every product. So there's literally 10 programs in flight that use different forms of Ocarina. Some are in-band dedupe only, some are in-band compression only, some are post-process dedupe and compression. Some, like the DX product that Derek's going to talk about, have all the cool advanced compressors. So special video, JPEG, SEG-Y for the seismic industry, EXR for media and entertainment, these kinds of traditional Ocarina capabilities. RNA Networks was kind of a stealthy little acquisition because it was a pure technology play for us. RNA Networks allows you to federate flash across lots of hosts. So imagine a render farm with 3,000 nodes, each with a terabyte of flash in it. Well, that's 3 petabytes of flash in a single aggregated namespace. So each node then effectively has access to 3 petabytes of flash. So that kind of federation capability is going to be really interesting on the host side.
Are you guys selling that still?
We are not selling it today.
Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like the legacy Ocarina product as a technology acquisition. We kind of took the original thing up. Now, frankly, they weren't really in the market. It was a very young company in terms of the
I mean, XNet, Ocarina, RNA, you guys bought as infants, which meant you could piss off the existing customers because there weren't enough of them to matter.
Well, yeah, and so we're actually still supporting Ocarina customers. In fact, if they want to buy another one, we'll sell them another one if they want to scale. But, new customers, not so much.
Yeah.
Right, and that's more of a support thing than anything else, because all the support engineers are now writing code for this other stuff. Aperture in March, which was a for those of you that have kind of studied Veeam and that category of emerging backup solution, Aperture was building a huge reputation. It was absolutely a killer deal for us. And we have it's immature as well, same kind of theme. It doesn't support Linux clients today. That's coming. But as far as its basic capabilities for application recovery and really simplifying backup workflows, they even have their own dedupe compression capability that's on par with some of the Ocarina stuff. So it's a great complementary addition and takes us down this path of self-protective storage. So, and by the way, there are a couple gaps in here, just letting you know. We're not going to speculate what can go in there, but there's a lot of things that we want to. I will kind of promise these are some of the things that we're very focused on, and I'm not going to tell you about products or time frames, but we are continuing to do M&A work, and in fact we're always doing things, and things are always falling through. They're like, okay, it's not worth the money, go on to the next one, right? And so we're always doing that kind of a look at the market, looking at a lot of startups. I talked about Ocarina. One of the interesting developments that we're very closely tied into are this emerging trend towards host-based storage, virtual SAN, VSA, peer-to-peer storage at the host level, and working with VMware, working with Microsoft, and particularly so for virtual server environments. That's an interesting development that Dell can invest in pretty easily. Not so much for EMC and NetApp. It's a little bit more of a challenge for them because they don't own the host here. Dense form factors, 60 drives and 4U. Dell is the supplier to the top cloud guys out there. So I won't name names, but we build these incredible 1 meter deep, DC powered, 200 terabyte and 5U kind of systems. And as we get into things, IP-based architectures that use things like erasure coding instead of hardware RAID controllers, all of a sudden those things are available to us as a storage business. And we can come up with some really interesting physical form factors. You will see us start to look more and more like Isilon in some places. Very, multi-petabyte storage, very high performance, scales out in performance as well as capacity. And we've got the economies of scale to really drive the cost out of some of those things. So that's going to be interesting, particularly for.
And that's going to be based off the XNet?
XNet. That's right. Well, we have two options because our DX product that's in the market today is a multi-petabyte system. So it depends a little bit on customer preference. Do they have a bias towards HTTP and flat namespace and object storage properties? Then we take them down the path of the DX. If they're biased towards scalable NFS because it's rendering or life sciences computing or something like that, or seismic, take them down the path of NAS. We can go either way.
Well, Isilon has a big problem with small file size, small files. So is there anything that you guys are going to do to address that? Because that's
Actually, it's a great question. So Isilon's block size is 16 kbytes or something like that. You write a lot of thumbnail images, your utilization goes to hell. Right? So
also the metadata creation just totally chokes them.
what we do, so we have optimizations for both large and small files. And it's partly because of our write caching model. We have synchronous replication of our write cache right up front, so we commit back a write as soon as something lands in cache. That's why our write performance is so high. So write heavy workloads, we do great. But it also means that we can do write coalescing. So if you're writing a bunch of 4 kilobyte files, well, if you're writing a bunch of very small files, we put the data in the inodes. If you're writing a bunch of, say, 16 kbyte files, we coalesce them into 1 megabyte extents, and then we round robin those across all the LUNs that are available to us. So we're doing both capacity balancing across all the available resources, and we're also doing write coalescing to make sure that any given write to disk is high performance. And it actually works out very well. It's a great system, and so in that regard, we have a substantial advantage over NetApp, we think. The way our metadata structures, our radix tree works, and so forth, we think we're going to do much better in that regard. NetApp is really focused, their architecture is an archival architecture. It's not really a performance-oriented architecture. They tried to work around that with their SSD nodes and some things like that, but fundamentally they can't change the underlying architecture like NetApp has trouble changing waffle. Okay, so we have yet to deliver storage arrays with both block and file coming from the same physical package. Right now our NAS is more of a physical gateway. So that, and that's great for the higher end markets, but as we get into kind of smaller cost sensitive markets, you got to have the all coming from one box, and so that's around the corner. No one in the NAS world is really doing global namespace. You have to be careful to define sort of clustered namespace versus wide area global namespace. So if you have an enterprise with 100 filers, how do you do distributed locking of files? How do you view the entire namespace from any single location? Things like that. Those are some of the things we're looking at.
Well, certainly there are a lot of people saying they do global namespace.
There are a lot of people that use the term global namespace that don't have what I mean by wide area global namespace. There are some people that so the Bycast acquisition by NetApp kind of took them down that path, but we're not sure that integration is going to be an easier, straightforward integration.
It gave them technical capability to do things like that. We'll see what they...
Yeah,
But they have such a great track record at acquisition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How long,
And integration,
well,
rapid integration.
Yeah.
If history is any indication, 8 years from now, we should see that feature come out of the product. We'll let Derek talk about erasure coding, policy-based workflows, embedded Aperture.
Just skip right over Flash.
Flash, I
This solid state
There might
stuff
be
is
some
just a
questions.
flash in the pan. I don't think it's really going to
it's just a
take off.
trend.
Yeah.
waiting
It'll-
on it.
it's
Yes,
a
I've
fad.
totally been waiting on it.
It's just
He
hype.
thought that up 6 weeks ago.
He's so proud of himself.
So I
Bluetooth flash?
can't say much about it because I can't say much about it. So there's a lot of Flash initiatives going on, particularly on the server side of the house at Dell, and so we're looking at that from a bunch of architectural perspectives, and we think it will be a core component of most future storage architectures.
What you want to do is get yourself a blade server and put blades in it with SSD on. You could make something really good like that.
So,
That's a crazy idea.
Extra dense.
Why didn't somebody ever think of that?
Real dense blade.
now I only have I have 2 minutes to go through 30 more slides. I want to show a bunch of Gartner graphs.
Please do. Gardner
I don't know
graphs.
if you've heard, but unstructured data is growing up and to the right. It's getting bigger.
I don't have anything heavy enough to get range on it to throw at it.
I'll tell you what. Why don't I just not show this?
You've got a burrito there.
Can I move first, Howard?
Well, if Jim is packing, you don't want to shop.
He throws like a girl, so.
I'm not going to throw the burrito.
Good.
All right, so no Gartner, no IDC. You guys know the story. We think with these acquisitions, we really are the hot startup, and I got to say, it's hard to integrate this stuff. I mean, it is not trivial to get. But there are cultural impediments too, right? Getting a Sunnyvale team to work with an Israeli team, to work with a Minnesota team, with a Nashua team. And we're having to work through some of those things. But the opportunity is ours.
I'm pretty sure it's hard to speak Yiddish with a Minnesota accent.
Oy vey, you know.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah, you betcha. Go and see the whole Mishpucha.
Mike,
that's all I got. So questions. Before I go over to Praveen, you're up next, Praveen. Have you gotten mic'd up, by the way?
can you go back to the,
Yeah.
you mentioned Exadata, there was another solution that was more scale out. What's the other scale out solution? It's not on this chart.
There was another
You
chart.
mentioned XNet. There's another scale out NAS solution that you talked about.
No, there's really
DX, the object store.
the DX object store.
DX object.
And you could call EqualLogic. Well, EqualLogic scale out.
EqualLogic is scale out. That's our first.
I'm not talking about EqualLogic. I'm talking about
So on the file
files.
side, on the file side, we have 2 scale-out architectures. One's an object-based architecture called DX, and the other is the XNet-based NAS scale-out.
But the DX is not acquired.
DX is a partnership technology. I mean, we've done a lot of the technology development ourselves. It's not a resale of straight across resale of someone else's stuff. I'll save that for Derek. Derek's going to cover the DX part.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not an acquisition yet.
No, it's not an acquisition.
Yeah.
It's part of
Yeah.
We shouldn't be speculating.
Well, we can speculate all we want.
You can't speculate.
You just
A
got
lot of
answers.
questions on Twitter, actually. A lot of comments. I don't know if these guys are going to open up and say what they asked. Nigel? Said a couple of things. Do you have comments?
What about them being legacy
I thought that was
architectures?
actually an interesting comment. Mike, what
Yeah.
do you hear? I think it's a good comment.
No, it was targeted mainly at Compellant. Although it's quite a recent acquisition and they were a startup not so long ago, because of how quickly things are moving in this industry, just wonder whether or not they're starting to show a little bit of age themselves. Compellant is a dual controller architecture, was designed with spinning disk in mind. While it might have seemed fresh and hip at one point, that's almost starting to look like yesterday's technology already.
Looks like he's in his late 30s.
Yeah, good question. So,
Really late
Late
things.
30s and old.
Well, not compared to NetApp, who's my age.
Yeah, like 90s.
I would say there's definitely pluses, in terms of data progression capabilities and so forth. It also, we need to get over some scalability hurdles in there. They've done the upgrade to 64-bit now. But one of the nice things about Compellant is it's an all software-based stack running on an IA architecture. And so there's a lot of extensibility and there's a lot of potentially repurposing of some of that stuff. Now, they have to keep up too. And we are looking at, well, how do you turn Compellant into more of a scale-out architecture? And so those are some of the things we're looking at right now. But they've already done the refresh onto the Dell hardware. That's now happened. Like you said, it's still young. So we'll have more of a firm roadmap later this year, probably, on exactly how that's going to evolve.
But putting 2 and 2 together as well, you were talking about potential acquisitions and not over as well, which just made me think, right, are they thinking the technologies like Compellant aren't particularly well suited to exploit the current rush to solid state? And would you look to acquire something there because...
Well, it might be yes and yes.
I know, and I know
So Compellant is I could tell you Compellent is well suited to supporting flash, and there is some investment there already. I can't say much more yet.
To supporting flash is what, an auto tiering solution, or will we ever see an all flash?
They do auto tiering now.
They do
auto
auto
tiering
tiering
No,
now.
no, I know. My question is,
Well,
is it well suited to use flash in that
So
context?
flash could be used in different ways. It can be used as a cache. It can be used as a tier 0, our definition of tier 0 is that it's up in the host. It can be a tier 1, in the array. And we're not ready to talk about exactly how it's implemented. There will be implementations where it can be configured as either, right? So you may want to pin workloads, or you might want to configure storage in such a way that flash acts as a write-through cache rather than a tier, right? If you need the persistent backing of disk to ensure failure resiliency, then you can cache. If you don't need the failure resiliency, then you can pin the whole workload to the flash tier. And because you're not going to do Reed-Solomon or complex RAID in the flash tier because it impacts IOPS too much. So you're more likely to do RAID 5 or replication or something like that. I mean, so those are some of the considerations, right? So
Reed-Solomon. Yeah.
Okay.
so I can't answer the question, but we are looking at flash can take many personalities depending on what tier it's in and what policy you've assigned to it for different workloads. We're a long ways from multi-tenancy, but ultimately you want to be able to have a system that has these dense IA-based arrays down here. That's the persistent, scale-out, low-cost storage. And that delivers, with enough scale, there's enough parallelism there to deliver throughput performance, but you need a flash tier to deliver IOPS performance. Okay, so you have scalability, you have economics, and you have IOPS performance. You have software-based block and file implementations on top of that. And that's really the only thing the thing you need to turn that into the ultimate private cloud is just multi-tenancy. Right? Multi-tenancy is saying these workloads get this class of service from a snapshot, replication, tiering, placement, performance, QoS, and so you have these collections of policies that define a class of storage, and you assign workloads to that class of storage. So that's multi-tenancy. So that's what the private cloud looks like. I mean, it's naive to say, oh, private cloud is just S3 implemented inside an enterprise data center. Right? It's not that easy, right? So we're looking down the road at those kinds of architectures and how you would implement flash in different ways to solve for different problems.
I mean, it's relatively easy for a company with money to buy a lot of technology. The big weakness that I see with Dell is you don't have a lot of storage expertise on the street. It's culturally the company has been a stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap, box mover, and you start getting into more advanced storage, and you've got to have people who can actually sell this stuff.
This is the paradox for all major OEMs is when you have a sales force that can make a lot of money selling laptops, how do you get them to pay attention to storage? And there's a bunch of answers to that, and we're kind of experimenting with different things right now. The main thing that becomes clear right away is the need for more of an overlay sales force. So we've been hiring furiously from places like EMC and NetApp over the last 6 or 8 months. And we have a team of storage specialists now that are paid on nothing but selling storage. And that's how we've been able to double Compellent revenue since we acquired them. So Compellent revenue is going through the roof, and EqualLogic continues to grow as well. So, and that's attributable mainly to these storage specialists. But there's still practical obstacles on the street of, well, this generalist sales guy over here doesn't want the specialists to come in and talk to his customer. There's it's very kind of an interesting territorial situation. And we fight those battles every day. But we're doing what we can from a compensation perspective, from a hiring perspective, and an overlay perspective to to go build guys that really have the competency here. So,
And I really have to say that I've disclosure, I've actually spoken at 2 events for Dell where they were pushing advanced technology, and it was really amazing to me, exactly the opposite of what you just said, basically, that the field is really energized to sell this stuff and was willing to put the money forward in order to hire me to go out and talk to potential customers about stuff that was not typical Dell server kind of stuff. I mean, it was their advanced storage, and I was really blown away by that because this was the field doing something, and it's exactly the opposite of the experience that people think that they have with Dell. And I'm not trying to be all nice to Dell, trust me, but in this case, I think I've been really amazed at how willing the field is to push stuff that is totally non-traditional and totally different from what you think that Dell would be, the rut that Dell would be stuck in. And so in storage, I'm actually pretty positive about their ability to sell some of this non-traditional and upcoming technology.
we take business every day from NetApp and EMC. And that's partly the products, but that's partly the sales guys as well. So there are proof points. It's never perfect though, and we're always investing and looking for ways to redo that and compensate people differently. And, I'll give you one example. That all of the generalist sales teams out there, they're not allowed to make their revenue accelerators or their commission accelerators until they sell a certain amount of storage. So whereas before it was just one big number, you had to hit it, didn't matter if all you sold was laptops. Now, the generalist, who's doesn't know an NFS from an iSCSI, is now has to go sell some storage. And so, this is a constantly changing machine, and we're doing what we can there.
You're talking about equal logic and kind of making more of a separation for the lower tier class of storage. My question is why? Now with SSDs, auto tiering, 10 gig Ethernet, why try to move it down?
Well, we're not, I shouldn't have said create separation. What I meant to say was expand the footprint. If you expand the footprint of EqualLogic, the place that we're likely to invest in is more cost optimizations down towards the low end. So, competing more with VNXE and FAS 2000 series, or even below that, down into kind of the Drobo, Iomega range of the market. We can do that with EqualLogic. And
Not to mention it means they can sell their own IP instead of sending LSI money to sell MD1000s.
Absolutely. And we have a massive, that's one thing that Dell has, when you mentioned sales, is a massive inside sales machine that really controls a lot of the SMB market. So we don't want to overlook that. It's probably not strategic in the sense that those guys are going to drive advanced enterprise features, but what they will drive is ease of use properties and masking, LUN and RAID complexity and things like that. And so they're good values to have in our portfolio.
So will EqualLogic come out with a SAS controller then for a direct connect?
Good. Right now, there's no plans to sell EqualLogic as a JBOD with the SAS interface. And if you guys are following Windows 8, for example, that's probably going to become a very common deployment model. And so we're going to be using our Powerball family for that right now.
Deploying EqualLogic as direct attached wouldn't even make sense. The whole thing
The
about
value proposition of scale out and so forth is more aligned
the
around.
load balancing,
That's true.
the group IP, and it wouldn't make sense.
But so on the topic of Windows Server 2012 or 8, yes, SAS absolutely is one of the big pushes for Microsoft. The other is Infiniband. And is there a Dell story around Infiniband at this point, or is that something that you're looking at? Well, you can't say if that's something you're looking at, but I can guess that you should be.
Well, we're looking at everything, so by definition,
because I could see compellant with Infiniband.
The stuff from Mellanox and the stuff from who are the other guys? I mean,
There are no other guys Mellanox.
Intel, because it's all Mellanox.
There's one, yeah. I can tell you clearly there are no products today, no arrays today supporting Infiniband, but we'll kind of start thinking a little more about that depending on how much Microsoft chooses to invest there. I mean, we're obviously we have a pretty close relationship with Microsoft, And we also have a very strong HPC organization. And so we have Infiniband in our portfolio. It might be the matter of just making a couple introductions and we're in that business. So,
Or some purchases. You know, there are some good companies in that area.
So I hate to.
would you have a relationship with any?
Hate to cut it off. 'Cause
Okay,
it's
yeah, we're
such a-
gonna,
we
so I'm
are-
out of time. But I'll be here if there are questions that come up about strategy and so forth that these following presentations kick off. I'm happy to try to answer.
You're on Twitter?
What's that?
You're on Twitter if they ever need to talk.
I'll have to figure out how those tubes work.